Please be seated. This feels a little bit like homecoming Sunday in a lot of ways, to see folks that I'm so glad to see. A couple of years ago, speaking of seeing, I went to the eye doctor for a routine checkup, and I got a little bit of a surprise. I thought my eyes were just the same as they had always been, but the doctor said, "Oh no, you are farsighted in one eye." Now this was weird. I've always been nearsighted from the time I was a very small child. I've had glasses, but my eyesight after puberty basically stayed the same until that meeting. She said, "Yes, in fact, your one eye is so farsighted and the other is so nearsighted that you have what's called monovision. You can't see depth." How did I not know that? Well, I had stopped playing tennis. Actually, I tried to play tennis once. And tennis is very difficult with no depth perception because you know the ball is coming at you, but you don't know where it is. So I was not doing it well. I thought it was just, I'm not very good at tennis, which my wife says is actually still true. So I went through and I had to get my first bifocal glasses to correct both eyes and give me depth perception back. I was thinking about that, the difference between seeing things as they are. How is it that my mind was able to compensate in some ways for this deficiency? Over a couple of years, my eye had been getting worse and worse, but my brain just made adjustments and faked me into thinking that I could see perfectly. Sight and vision are like that. And they're like that in our spiritual lives as well. We think we're seeing things as they are, and yet God tells us over and over again, oh no, things are actually quite different. In our gospel today, Jesus is giving the alternate version of the Sermon on the Mount. Maybe you thought this sounded familiar, but a little weird. Does anyone have that experience? I thought it was blessed are the poor in spirit, right? Blessed are you who are poor. It's Luke's version of the Sermon on the Mount. And this time Jesus is down with the people on the plain, giving them the hard truth that they are seeing the world wrong. They think, as we've always thought, that if you're rich, you're blessed. If you're rejoicing, you're blessed. If you are well thought of and people like you, you're blessed. And Jesus says, oh no, in the reign of God, it is the opposite. Blessed are the poor. Blessed are those who are weeping and grieving. Blessed are those who are persecuted. Blessed are those who are hungry. That's how life is from God's perspective, because God doesn't see things the way that we do. Our vision is like mine, somewhat diminished. A few weeks ago, my wife and I went to a wonderful exhibit at the DIA. There's a new Van Gogh exhibit I think it's here through January. I think you guys went, right? Yeah, you did. Wasn't it great? It was great. So it's Van Gogh in America, and it celebrates the fact that the very first museum in America to recognize Van Gogh's genius and buy a painting was our own Detroit Institute of Arts. And so they have gathered this amazing exhibit of Van Gogh works from around the country and the world. And as I was looking at some of these very familiar paintings, a theme emerged that I had not really noticed before, that Van Gogh, painters for centuries either painted religious works. We have a religious artist in our midst who has painted beautiful icons of Our Lady and of Jesus. That was a very familiar theme for artists in the Middle Ages. And then later on, artists took commissions and painted royalty and wealthy patrons, right? They would do portraits of these very elegant people. Well, Van Gogh painted elegant portraits too, but not of nobility, not of royalty, not of wealthy patrons. Some of his most famous portraits are of his mailman and the mailman's wife and the mailman's kids, who were nobodies. And yet they are on the wall of the DIA in glorious oil paintings. absolutely stunning portraits of common people. I was given a print many years ago by the family of a priest who had been a mentor of mine after he died. It was a painting that hung in his, or a print that hung in his office. And it was one of Van Gogh's paintings of his work boots. You ever seen that? Van Gogh took time to paint his old beat up work boots. And this priest had that painting in his office as a reminder that he should be humble and that he was a servant and that he should look at the world in the way that Van Gogh did, looking for the beauty in the commonplace. Isn't that amazing to see as Van Gogh did? Now, Van Gogh had some other issues, which we won't talk about now. He suffered from depression, but he had the vision to see truth where others saw nothing. They overlooked, but he could see. He had the eye of an artist. And I believe our lessons are calling us in a way to see things differently. I'll give you a quick example. So I was watching regular TV this weekend because of all the great sports stuff that was on, the World Series, great college football games. And so as a result, I saw a lot of ads for, guess what? Politics. But really I found hilarious. There was one commercial I saw for, I don't even know who this woman is. She's running for office in Macomb County somewhere. And the first ad was 30 seconds of why she is the devil incarnate. I mean, not only should she not be in office, she should be driven out of the country. You know, she's just horrible, just the most horrible person in the world. And the very next ad was why we should vote for her for office, because she's the best thing since sliced bread. I'm sure probably the truth lies somewhere in between, right? Because she's a real human being, I'm sure with strengths and weaknesses. But it was stunning to me how we could have such a different viewpoint, so dramatically described in these two ads. What are we to do in a world where our eyesight is clouded? What are we to do in a world where we are bombarded with people telling us how to see things, how to think, and how to be? I believe our scriptures invite us, as they always do, to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Because guess what? Whether that woman gets elected on Tuesday, our vocation as Christians is going to be the same. Whether she doesn't get elected on Tuesday, our vocation is going to be the same. No matter which political party is in charge, our vocation as Christians is the same. To hold on to the vision of God that is revealed to us in the prophet Daniel, with all of his wonderful animals and weird stuff going on. Daniel is also lifting up a vision of hope that God is in charge. For the people who were living in exile and suffering, Daniel says, God is still in charge. Hold on to that vision. Be patient, be faithful. Your God is real. And for the people in Ephesus, St. Paul does the same thing. For you Christians who are being persecuted, who are suffering, cling to the vision of Christ in glory, seated at the right hand of God. Allow God's Spirit to enlighten the eyes of your heart. Isn't that a beautiful image? To enlighten the eyes of your heart. Because like me, your eyes might be nearsighted and farsighted at the same time. You can't trust them. Let God's light infuse the darkness in your heart and see with the eyes of God. See the glory of God revealed in the reign of God. You can't live into it yet fully, but it's there, and it is your vocation to cling to that, to be faithful, and to do what you can where you can. As Jesus said, to see, like Van Gogh did, the needs of the common people, the poor, the grieving, the hungry, the persecuted, to identify with them in such a deep way that you can manifest the love and power and mercy of God. That's what it means to be a saint. We lift up today two kinds of saints. We lift up the great saints, the apostles, the martyrs, the great saints like St. Francis, who down through the ages have been the lights of the world in their generations, examples for us. But we also lift up the small s saints, that list of names that we'll read in the prayers of the people, our family members, our friends and loved ones who have died and whom we carry in our hearts. Those small s saints also are worthy of our attention and our prayers and our love, and walking in their footsteps. My prayer is that on this All Saints Sunday, you might have the courage, the grace, the power to live into that vision of God, a vision of inclusive love for all people, a vision that includes those who are overlooked. I think in God's gallery, you imagine God having his own art museum. Our paintings are up on the wall, along with the people of Ukraine, along with those who are hungry and homeless. God has them in beautiful frames where God can admire the beautiful handiwork that he has created. May we cling to that vision in times of darkness and make known as best we can the amazing, abundant love of God.